Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Whit Ye Daein. It's an absolute pleasure for me today to be joined by Helene Hall, who is one of the latest founder businesses that I have been working with at Rise over the past couple of months. But before we get into sort of what we're doing and what you're doing, Helene, let's hear a bit about you.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on to be here today. So thank you. A little bit about myself. So my background's really been in marketing and advertising. I started my career many years ago, initially as my own business. Then I went into agency side and then client side as sort of marketing director. And then back to my last role was sort of CEO of a marketing agency in London. So I've spent many years looking at all of the different types of sort of digital marketing predominantly, but also TV, radio, affiliate, email. But my passion really started off in PPC and then in SEO, so organic search engine optimization. And so I've really seen the transition and the requirements really from a business perspective of how to make a marketing work and cost effective. And when I was brand side, it was always about, so in a brand as a marketing director, it was always about reducing the cost per acquisition and increasing the customer acquisition whilst trying to maintain a good level of cost. And over the years, it's been really interesting to see how actually the ROI is forever decreasing and the click-through rates are forever decreasing.
Yes.
And I think it's been really clear that the industry has got to change in the coming times.
So I'm really intrigued by people like yourself who have spent so much time in digital marketing, really understanding, as you've just described, the whole ecosystem. I'm really interested how you got to that point. As a child or as a teenager, you didn't suddenly think, I want to work in digital marketing.
Yes.
What led you into that type of field in the first instance? What was attractive about that? Was there a particular light bulb moment that you thought, this is where I want to be?
Well, I think it's not so much where I didn't wake up one day and think I wanted to be in marketing. My career kind of evolved really, and I did want to get into medical sales. So I sort of was a medical sales rep and I loved it, looking at all of the sort of the background of pharmaceuticals, and I worked for some really great pharmaceutical companies. And in that process, I love data, I love information, I love research. And that actually can tie very nicely with marketing. And so as I saw the opportunity, it started really off in collateral and marketing information. Then it evolved into the passion. My passion at the time was paid search and PPC, because those are really tangible. You can really measure performance.
Okay.
You can really look. And it felt, there was a sort of an eye-opening moment when I was working in an agency, a large agency that was really good at paid search, where it felt like you could almost make money with PPC, and you just had to hit a certain ROI and then you could scale. So you could pump in, as long as you've got the metrics right and you've tested it and you can see that it's working, you can deploy a lot of cash to then generate a return. And the sky's the limit in certain brands. Obviously, if brands have millions to spend, as long as they get a good cost per acquisition, as long as they get a good ROI. So that's when I kind of started on that journey and the passion around data research.
Yes.
But then I found SEO and fell in love with SEO because it was more complicated and it wasn't so... it didn't have a strict set of rules. It was more about investigating what's the issue, looking at the content strategy. How could you achieve that? What does the consumer want? What do they need? What are they interested in? And all of those components I really found interesting. And actually, when many years ago, before I did all of this, I, without knowing, was a sort of into SEO because I was a coder. Prior to all of that, I built my first website, and then I was doing HTML and also working on a small business's SEO back in the day when it was called Web Position Gold, before it was seen as SEO. So that's kind of how I got into those kind of passions. And really from that point on, when you're looking at a multi-channel, omni-channel kind of experience, at that point you then have to increase out into affiliate marketing and email marketing and out of home, TV, radio. And as a marketing director, being responsible for different teams, different countries, and all of the data and ultimately trying to bring it all back to have one strategy that enabled all the individual channels to have their own unique strategy within that. So
Yes. And tying it all together.
Exactly, yes.
And this has been one of the key points. We were introduced, thank you, Dean, for the introduction at the beginning of this year. And there was a few things that immediately struck a chord when we started to chat. First of all, the fairness of Earneco.
Yes.
The fairness and data use. But also this opportunity to tie together and uncomplicate the health and beauty space for consumers. And we'd been chatting, I think, for a few weeks when we first met in April this year. And we were together on a round table the day that British Beauty Council announced their updated value of beauty report, and you can read that report on British Beauty Council website. The value of beauty and personal care in the UK alone was 24.5 billion pounds in 2022. So it's an enormous business, and yet we still have this dilemma for the consumer on how do I choose and how do I use what's best for me. And then we have this issue for the brand, which we heard really loud and clear at that round table, on where do I focus? How do I create that simplicity? How do I create something tailored without breaking the bank? We heard a lot that day, Helene, about the cost of acquisition and the barriers that they were finding in a market like the UK, where we're also seeing a reduction in potential retail listing. So you've almost got this perfect storm for brands to look at how do I create those personalised experiences for the consumers who are looking for my type of product. So it just seemed like a perfect match. So tell us about Earneco.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I really agree. It feels like the beauty industry, and from those round tables, it was really clear that they're being really squeezed. And that's really where transformation comes out of. And I think as a whole, advertising and marketing is also being really squeezed. The return on investment is going down, the click-through rates are decreasing, and the cost to actually play in the market is ever increasing. And that's really because of a few kind of fundamental reasons, which is why Earneco was born. But I guess as a background, in advertising and marketing, the cost is ever increasing because we've got some major big players. And as we do that, they're able to dominate and increase the costs. But really, when you think about the industry as a whole and what consumers are used to, there's a lot of ad fraud. There's a lot of ad blindness. There's a lot of interactions with consumers that it's disruptive or it's intrusive. And that is getting better. So that over time, that has been improving. But really, ad fraud's a huge issue. That's actually unspoken about. And it's not something that anybody has, or the big platforms actually have a resolution or a solution for. But where I studied for quite a few months the shifting behaviours of consumers, and what I could see is that there's a shift and an expectation that comes with that about their attention and their data and their power. And what's missing in traditional advertising is that the user is not an active participant in environment.
They're almost being pushed to.
They are, and they're not involved.
And they're overwhelmed with where to start with all this information.
And they're not in control.
No.
And they're not fairly rewarded.
Yeah.
So it happens to be that consumers are actually the main star of advertising and marketing. They're the star, they're the celebrity, yet they're not in control of the experience, and they're not fairly rewarded. So in my perspective, all advertising at the moment, yes, it has its place, but what it isn't doing, it isn't fairly rewarding the user. So it's not socially responsible. And so what we're doing with Earneco is we're flipping the switch within traditional advertising to consumer centric, whereas at the moment it's B2C, and now we're flipping that to C2B. And what we're doing is putting the consumer in control and putting them right in the middle and making them the most powerful piece. And essentially what that means is that the consumer gets to say, I'm interested in XYZ. I'm interested in anti-aging or serums or healthcare or beauty. And then they only see what they're happy to see. And we've seen some massive increases in ROI and the click-through rates. The industry click-through rates around sort of 1.5%, whereas we're achieving 31% because we're putting the consumer at the heart.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's stark.
It is. And I think it's, it feels like a revolution, really.
Yeah, exactly.
When you think about how historically all the consumers have been not placed in the middle. Quite rightly, I think they should be. So I think that's a shift that obviously we're participating in, but I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be all about the consumer.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many thoughts going through my head, Helene, as you're describing, how we solve this growing problem with advertising. I'm thinking about research that I've been involved in, looking at what matters to the consumer, and in a big area that I've looked at extensively is the source and sustainability of ingredients, for example, and actually trying to filter through all of the noise of what's being thrown in terms of advertising. Filtering that through into actually getting to what the consumer is interested, what matters to that consumer, and being involved with brands. The number one criteria is a consumer wants, in beauty and personal care, a consumer wants an efficacious formulation, something that addresses the concerns that they have for their health or their skin health. But then there's more and more that sits behind that, and technology allows us to bring some of that together so that the consumer is much less confused and it is much more targeted into what matters to them and how their lifestyle changes. Because I think this is the key thing again about beauty and personal care, is that it's a constant evolving position. You think of the lifetime of a consumer and how their health changes, their skin health changes, their hair changes, and how do I, as my hair begins to grey, how do I deal with that? At a much more fundamental level, if something changes in my health, or the environment that I'm living in, how do I deal with that, and how do I filter through all this noise that the world makes? So how do you see that future?
Yes. Well, I just to sort of second what you've just said, a lot of the user testing and interviews that we did prior to sort of creating Earneco was really touching on that point. And we didn't expect to hear back from our user base that said, marketing and advertising is not talking to us. We're having our unique experiences, and they've been interested in makeup, and now they're in their 60s, and that they feel that they're not being talked to by brands. So that was a huge eye-opener for us to say, actually, the consumer knows what they want. They're, exactly as you said, they're having different unique experiences that are unique to them, and they're looking for products that are perfectly matched to their needs. And so how we deal with that is we effectively give our consumers the opportunity to control that. So they can say, I'm interested in XYZ. I am I have sensitive skin, almost defining what it is that they are. And they can control it and they can change it. So say, for example, at the moment, perhaps if you're being retargeted and you see that if you've been out looking for a fridge and then you've bought a fridge but you're still seeing the fridge advert, right? In this environment you get to say, I'm not interested in this anymore, or I'm now interested in this. And so it's better suited to the individual's needs and they're in control of it. So they can customize their experience. And what that means really is that they're actually looking for it, and they're willing to see, they're willing to learn, and they want to be educated on the products that they're interested in.
Great. So let's talk about the experience of Earneco from both sides now. We've been working together closely now, I think, for a couple of months.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was thrilled to join you on the journey as Director of Health and Beauty because, as you know, I've spent my life in health and beauty, as you've heard me talk about a few times. So very, very passionate about that space. And so what we've essentially done for the last couple of months is talk to one-to-one with health and beauty brands who have a real educational element to what they're offering. And we've not had a single brand say, I don't need this, which is incredible with technology. Yeah. Because I think everyone is in that real dilemma stage of how do I find my way forward for my business? How do I support my business to grow with all this diminishing return on investment, reduction in click-through rates, increase in costs like you've described? So I think I'm understanding the brand side of Earneco, and I'm less understanding, although I'm becoming increasingly addicted to the consumer side. So describe for me, please, Helena, the consumer experience. So I subscribe to, as a new user, if someone hasn't heard of Earneco who's listening to our podcast today and they want to subscribe to Earneco, talk them on that journey for me, please.
So at the moment it's a web app, and next year it will be an app. So essentially at the moment they go on to their mobile phone, their web browser, and they come on to app.earneco.com and they sign up. And it's at that point then they can add their interest points. So skincare, hair care, women's health, men's health, perfumes, sensitive skin, organic, eco-friendly. They can choose whatever the selection is that they're interested in. And then what we do is we curate a watch list for them. Every day they get to watch up to 10 ads, and they can dismiss the ad if they're not interested in it. They can watch the ad if they are interested in it. They can save it, they can share it, and they can obviously buy. So the user, it's a great opportunity for the user to explore. And now with the days where in beauty, there isn't that, you've got COVID, and that really changed and shook the environment up. And now from a consumer's perspective, specifically in health and beauty, it's very hard to know what product that you want and find out information about it. If you walk into Boots or a shop, it's very difficult to get all of the information that you're looking for. So what Earneco does, it gives brands an opportunity to communicate that and educate the consumer, and the consumer can tailor what they need and can interact better and find out more about the brand. So essentially they watch a 30-second ad. At the end of it, they're asked a question based on the ad that they've just watched. Now, this is a great opportunity for brands to really drum home the message and just make sure that they've communicated what they want. And from a consumer perspective, this is every consumer is verified as a unique user. And when they have the quiz question, this is their opportunity, which we find is quite addictive from a user perspective. They want to get it correct. But if they do get it correct and they've correctly answered the question, that's when they're rewarded and they earn points, and the points turn into money.
Okay.
And they can.
So at the moment on the platform, the points turn into
Amazon vouchers.
Yes. So basically, you're being paid for your attention.
Exactly.
As a consumer.
Yes.
In the health and beauty space, who does not love that idea?
Yes. And also every user can become their own mini influencer as well. So if you've seen an ad, you've seen a product that you think, oh, I'm going to buy, or I'm really interested in this, or if you know a friend that would be, you can share it and also earn. If that user then signs up, you earn. And how we've structured it so they actually earn the same amount that an influencer would earn if they've got, 10,000, 100,000, whatever that scaling is. Actually, when we did the research, per user in a sort of a acquisition basis, our users can earn the points that make up to money, and so that they can, if they have an audience, they can monetize their audience as well. But also, really, it's about monetizing their own attention.
Yes. And as I say, anyone who has an interest in their health and well-being, why would they not be interested in being rewarded for watching something that they're interested in? And I spoke to a multi-brand player from a brand side of things a couple of days ago, and she said to me, "Gosh, this is like a new horizon. This is a no-brainer. This is actually an opportunity for me to once again connect with my consumer." Mm-hmm. So we're on this journey really with, like any marketplace, of scaling both sides.
Yes.
So I'm very focused on working with you to introduce the right types of health, beauty, well-being type brands. And from the consumer side, what's next, Helena?
Yes, so we're obviously onboarding consumers specifically interested in health and beauty and wellness at the moment. Over time, in the next year, we're going to have an app, and we have a massive vision of where Earneco is going to go. So eventually, if users come on board, they'll be able to earn from their attention, from their purchases, from their actively and passively. And when they're listening to content, and I guess it's right at the starting point at the moment. And for a consumer, what we're going to do is we're going to onboard different niches, different areas, so that as their interests grow, they have the platform there to support them.
Amazing. I mean, it's an amazing vision that you've got. How long have you been on this journey now? From the first sort of concept to where we are now, how long has that journey been?
So it's only really been about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And what have you learnt in that time?
Oh, massively.
Okay.
Massive amounts. I've been surprised, actually. One of the biggest, I always plan for the worst, hope for the best. I'm actually
awesome.
A really positive person. I think mindset is really important.
Yes.
But I have been so surprised at how everybody, brands, consumers, and everywhere that I go is embracing Earneco. I just feel essentially that it's the right time. It's like I'm grabbing hold of a tiger and just holding tight, because it feels like it's going to take off, and it is.
Yes, because it's so fair. Because everybody wins.
Yes.
That's what I loved about it from the first moment we met and started to explore how we could work together. That's the thing, because essentially what we're saying is advertising in its current format is broken.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And what we've come up with here is, or what you've come up here is a solution to solve those problems. And it's really just in its first stage. So
yes.
What's the biggest barrier that you face right now?
Oh, well, I think for us, it's a marketplace. And so we have to get both sides. We have to get the brands on board and the consumers and match those niches. The barriers really are the traditional expectations and the traditional thinking. Yeah. And that's, at the same time as being a challenge, it's also a fantastic opportunity.
That's it.
Because it really is a win-win-win. So it's a win for brands.
And that genuinely, Helena, is the whole background of this podcast series. It's about, within different sectors, within different areas of business, how can we challenge the status quo?
Yes. Yeah.
We're in unprecedented, actually, economic times in our lifetime.
Yes, yeah.
And how do we challenge this status quo and find new ways forward in a way that everyone wins.
Yes,
So thank you so much.
Oh no, you're very welcome.
For coming to Glasgow for the first time.
Yes, it's lovely here. So well, thank you for having me.
Showing you some of the sites this morning, but planning to show you more. And thank you so much to our audience once again for joining us. We really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Whit Ye Daein.